Hello, my name is Megan Varner, and I am a health coach and physical therapist. I work with individuals that have POTS and chronic fatigue, helping them rebuild their energy so that they can thrive again in their lives. I'm very passionate about working with this population as I myself have these conditions and have been learning how to navigate them over the last decade. I'm happy to say that you can get back to having more energy and enjoying your life more fully. So the topic for today's video is tips for navigating brain fog with POTS. This is something that quite a few clients talk to me about, but it was also a big piece of my own journey and maybe one of my first challenging symptoms to navigate, working full-time as a PT back when I first got diagnosed. And that is in part why I made this video. I would like to point out that this video is for informational purposes only, and it's not to replace medical advice. Please check with your care team before implementing any of my suggestions. If you're interested in learning about working with me, I will be sharing more information at the end of that video. What's brain fog? If you're watching this video, you probably think you have it, but just to kind of talk a little bit about how it is commonly defined, it's a feeling of being cloudy-headed. You feel like you're walking around with fog, like a cloud around you. You may have trouble remembering things or learning new information, finding words or recalling, figuring out how to get home. I struggled with that quite frequently in my early days of POTS. You feel confused, you have difficulty focusing, you feel unclear, you may have difficulty communicating with other individuals or remembering what you're doing from one moment to the next. Brain fog is having difficulty thinking clearly, in a nutshell, but all those will hopefully ring some bells for those that are listening. It's actually more common than you think. The niche that I work with POTS and chronic fatigue, definitely experience it, but there are other conditions that it can also coexist with. Often individuals with chronic pain or who are experiencing chronic physical or mental stress. If you're dealing with high levels of inflammation or having difficulty sleeping, like insomnia, if you have any history of anxiety or depression, fibromyalgia is another common diagnosis I've seen that they've talked about having difficulties with brain fog. Blood sugar regulation challenges, whether your blood sugar is going really low and you're getting hypoglycemic, or it's going high and you're getting hyperglycemic, or you're going through some hormonal changes, whether that be you're going into menopause as a female, or even different times of the month if you're still cycling. So brain fog is very common, and that said, please share this video with anyone that you may think may benefit. All these things I just mentioned, there's another reason I mentioned them, they have something in common. They all have some relation back to changes in the state of the nervous system. So what do I mean by that? Well, our nervous system is affected by what is going on around us and what is going on inside of us. So physically, emotionally, mentally, and it's wired to respond to that. Our autonomic nervous system is kind of that thermostat that responds to the environment. And depending upon how our thermostat is set, it can be either in a state of regulation in a nice set point where you feel good, you're not too hot, you're not too cold, or it can kind of be stuck at one extreme or another. So we all know when thermostat isn't super comfortable, we don't feel super great. That's a good analogy on how the autonomic nervous system can work and what can happen when it becomes a bit dysregulated. It sends signals up to our brain sends signals down to our body, and our brain, of course, is the source or what we're labeling as brain fog. So when brain fog is present, that can actually be a sign that our thermostat is off or our nervous system is shifting into a state of dysregulation. Most commonly, it's from some type of stressor. Stressors can come in all shapes and forms. You can probably think of a couple right off of the top of your head. Some very common ones that I see with clients and I've seen in my own journey are changes in the quality or the quantity of your sleep. Your blood sugar, either too high or too low, not being stable during the day, can shift your nervous system into a state of dysregulation. Inflammation levels mounting over time, that can definitely be a big one. Thinking about what you're eating is another piece. I talk about diet in quite a few of my videos, but this can actually contribute quite a bit to brain fog, and I'll share more information on that when I talk about tips. But what we eat, if we are eating not enough or we're not getting the balance of nutrients that our body needs, that include electrolytes and fluids, that can put us into our thermostat becoming dysregulated. When we're in a state of dysregulation that is more of a stressed state, that actually can lead in the average person, not just those of us with POTS, to less blood flow being returned back up to the brain. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? So with POTS, our blood can pool in our lower half due to changes in how our nervous system and our blood vessels respond to the pooling of blood. We don't get that blood squeezed back up to our heart and to our brain, and that can make it difficult to think when we're not getting the blood that we need. Layered on with other stressors, like I just mentioned, that can intensify potentially the brain fog that we're experiencing. So putting on those compression stockings and pumping the fluids and electrolytes can help for managing with brain fog. But quite often I have clients say, well, I do that. I wear waist-high compression and I'm really hydrated and I'm still struggling with brain fog. What's going wrong? Taking a step back and looking at some of the stressors I mentioned can really help clarify things quite a bit. So, trouble with our nervous system often is manifested in different ways, but changes in our gut function and changes in how well we're able to sleep can be some red flags. And I bring that up because I wish someone had told me that many years ago when I first started on my journey with POTS, or figuring out what it was and getting labeled with POTS and then learning how to thrive with it. So some other things that can accompany brain fog or symptoms would be like headaches, having fatigue, muscle cramps, feeling heavy, and just having an overall change in your mood. I like to point those out because it can be associated and it's not odd to feel them as well, at least from my experience thus far, my journey and with clients. I like to explain because now you're going to understand a little bit about what I'm going to share as how to navigate brain fog. When your nervous system or your thermostat is in a dysregulated state, learning ways to bring it back into a regulated state or changing its set point can be very helpful. So first you got to recognize what state your nervous system is in. Is it dysregulated? One of the things I've actually talked about in some of my past videos is using HRV as a proxy for that. You can also look at your heart rate trends, but that's something that can be an objective measure that's helpful, especially with individuals, which I fell in that category for a while. You become a bit disconnected from what exactly is going on with your body just to survive, or you've learned to numb how you're feeling so that you can cope with your symptoms. Figuring out the state of your nervous system can be tough when you're not able to tune into what your body is telling you, or that interoceptive sense. You can look at signs of dysregulation in the body. There's definitely things like the higher heart rate and the lower HRV, getting hot, getting more tired, beginning to feel different sensations in your body, like butterflies or shoulders elevating, can be signs of what state your body's shifting into. The tips I'm going to share to help you get back into regulated state apply to either a state where you're in a high stress, where you're in like a fight, flight, or sympathetic state and you feel adrenaline surges coming on, or if you feel an overwhelm and a shutdown where you're heavy feeling, don't want to move. So you don't necessarily have to pick which one. It's still very helpful to figure out which one you're in because you can get a lot more granular with what you're doing. The first one I want to share is a self-hug that you can do, but this adds a little bit extra to it. You're doing a butterfly hug where you're putting one hand on each shoulder or one hand on each collarbone and you're just doing a tap. I like to add a little bit of rocking. Tapping side to side, you're connecting the two hemispheres of the brain. That can be very calming and grounding to the body. I add a little bit of rocking, as rocking side to side can also be soothing and bringing you back into more of a regulated state. You can combine that with the next one, or you can do it by itself. I talk about breathing a lot in my videos because it is so helpful for training that regulation of the nervous system, or engaging what some call the vagal brake. breathing at a nice even inhale and an even exhale can be super helpful to shift you back into a more regulated state. It's also important to learn how to engage your diaphragm with breathing, which working with someone like myself, like a PT, can be helpful to retrain that. So those two are examples of bottom-up regulation of your nervous system. So using the body through touch, through breathing, or there's a top-down regulation. Top-down regulation is not saying that it's all in your head, and it may seem kind of odd when you have a little bit of brain fog to say to tap into your mind, but it can be helpful because your mind affects your heart rhythms, which affects your HRV, which shows what's going on with your nervous system. So one of my favorite ways to do it is to recall a memory or a person or a place or maybe an object of some sort that brings you a regenerative emotion that can bring your heart rhythm back into more of a coherent or smooth state that can help clear up your brain fog. So try it. If you'd like more tips, you're welcome to drop a comment below the video, but just doing that and slowing your breathing rate, focusing on breathing again through that diaphragm as you do it can be super helpful, and it's using the top to regulate down. The other few points that I make are also important, but I'd say that nervous system regulation piece is a key piece a lot of people that are missing, that I was definitely missing with regulating brain fog for many years. So try it out and see how you like it. The other pieces are supporting your physical recovery. This is where the blood sugar regulation and the fluid and electrolyte intake comes in, as when your nervous system has a leaning towards becoming more dysregulated, like with POTS, when we are dehydrated or our blood sugar drops, or if it goes really high when we eat, that can shift our thermostat and shift us into a stress state and can influence our brain fog. And that said, there are a couple types of foods or food contents that seem to be associated with brain fog. It's something that you'd want to work with a coach or a dietitian or nutritionist so you are mindful of getting the nutrients you need. Oxalates and histamines are the two ones that I have come across in my journey and with clients that seem to cause the most brain fog. Those include lots of foods, and it's important to, like I said, be mindful of how you do it, but for some individuals, just fixing that can do a world of good for their brain fog. There's also kind of the common food allergies like corn, wheat or gluten, soy, dairy, and eggs. I will say for me, cow dairy was a big game changer when I figured that out to help with my own brain fog, but we're all a little different. Some of these can actually be tied back to gut health, which is a piece that I walk some clients through if they are not aware of how much that can contribute to how they're feeling. When our gut gets leaky, we can get more reactive to things, and some of the reactions can actually be brain fog. There is hope to be able to eat things again and not feel so foggy-headed. Personally, for me, that was almonds for many years. Another piece of physical recovery that can be important to help manage brain fog is figuring out what movement your body needs to thrive. What do I mean by that? So any condition in which they can become very malaised or have post-exercise malaise, it's important to decide with the help of a care team how much exercise is what your body needs in that moment in time. Exercise can help our heart pump more efficiently to get that blood back up to our brain, can help with our vascular tone. It can, over time, help with stamina and energy levels that correspond with helping with brain fog. But you want to find that sweet spot so you're not overdoing it. Some individuals need to start really slow and they need some more guidance. If you are interested in a class, I do offer a class that I co-teach with a gentle yoga instructor. We blend mindful motion and breath work and the yoga every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll put a link below the video if you want to drop in for one of the classes. You can join us from anywhere via Zoom, or if you're in the area, you can always come join us in person. So last but not least, this is actually one that a client just today brought to my attention. You want to look at the environment around you. As for the allergies that you may have, allergic responses, just like food, can make you feel very tired. Many people that I work with, they may have histamine intolerance, which isn't just food, but that can be reactions to the environment. or you may actually have mast cell activation disorder syndrome. So that's something to consider if you haven't looked into that and you think you may be having some reactions that are connected to your brain fog. Whenever the flowers and things are in bloom, I definitely notice a shift in how I feel. So that could be a key. Managing that with some changes in your medications or your environment, working with your care team can be very helpful. Take into consideration what your light exposure is like. Why do I talk about that? Well, right here where I am, it's a good example. I have bright lights on me right now because it's beginning to get a little bit dark. And when you are exposed to a lot of light late in the day and not exposed to natural light earlier in the day, that can change the regulation of that thermostat. Our bodies function on rhythms. Our HRV, our hormones, our sleep-wake cycle, it's all very tied into what exposure we have to light. So figuring out how you can get some exposure early in the day and limit bright light exposure as you go into the evening can be helpful for brain fog. This last one, this is what the client I mentioned brought most to my mind, is the effect that others have on you. Others can make you feel more cloudy-headed or have more brain fog. This can actually have some tying back to how much energy drain that you have when you're around others, if they fill you with energy or if they drain you. Some people are more introverted or extroverted, and that can be helpful for learning how you can get back to thriving. For many years, I did not realize that I was actually more leaning a bit to introversion and thought that people recharged me. I drained my energy a lot more and had a lot more trouble concentrating because of that. So the other thing to think about with this is the energy from their heart that they give off. Our heart gives off an electromagnetic field, and when our heart is in more of a coherent, regulated rhythm, corresponding with our nervous system, we can give off that energy of regeneration to others. When it's in an incoherent rhythm, we give off that more depleting energy to others. So think about that the next time you're around individuals and you're beginning to experience a little bit more cloudy-headedness than normal. So I hope these tips were helpful. This video got a little bit longer, but this is a huge topic, it seems like, at least with the clients that I've worked with, and even in the private Facebook group that I have called Thriving with POTS. And if you're interested in having more guidance in putting all the pieces together as to what may be contributing to your brain fog and how you can start improving it, you are welcome to reach out for a free coaching session. I have a link below this video, but you're also welcome to email me at megan.varner@guidetoresilience.com.